Hello, everyone. Welcome to Change Now, Day 2, 2022. Can I hear you? Bonjour. Ah, that's good. We need a little bit of action this morning to warm us up. In fact, not so much warm us up. What an amazing day yesterday. Quite extraordinary. So much stuff. Look at the daily briefing email to check out what happened and what is happening today. And it's my great pleasure to be part of the opening ceremony today. And I was just thinking about what Santiago said to us yesterday at this very moment. He said to us, any action you can take matters. And I want you to remember that today. We all have to take action. It is too late not to take action. Today at Change Now, on this amazing campus of incredible kind of innovation and speakers, we have pieces on or talks on low-carbon cities, changing the food system, adaptation and resilience, particularly with a focus on cities, and exiting fossil fuels, which I'm sure you'll agree we need to do fast. And you will have seen the Renault car, concept car, maybe yesterday. Have a look at that. Plus all the amazing innovators. There are 1,000 innovating solutions on display here. They're also in the Springwise Innovation Report if you want to have a look at them. So today, for this session, we're going to frame the day through the lens of one of the world's most famous and interesting economists, a lady called Kate Raworth, who many of you know. And I think that's a really good way of framing this day and this event, if you like, because it gives us a kind of a macro from which we can create solutions. It's part of the inspiration, if you like. And I'm just going to introduce Kate now. She's going to come on and talk for 15 minutes, and then we're going to have a little fireside chat. So Kate is an economist at the Doughnut Economics Action Lab. She's an ecological economist and creator of the Doughnut, a concept that aims to meet all the needs of people within the means of the living planet. She's also co-founder of Doughnut Economics Action Lab, and her internationally best-selling book, Doughnut Economics: 7 Ways to Think Like a 21st Century Economist, has been translated into over 20 languages, widely influential with diverse audiences from the UN General Assembly and Pope Francis to Extinction Rebellion. She is a senior associate at Oxford University's Environmental Change Institute, where she teaches on the Masters in Environmental Change and Management. She's also professor of practice at Amsterdam University of Applied Sciences. She has also been described, which is perhaps my favorite descriptor, as a renegade economist. Please welcome Kate Raworth.
Bonjour! I wish I could do this whole talk in French, but it wouldn't go quite so well. I have to say, I'm really delighted to be here, and I am awed to be sharing the stage with our planetary home. I mean, I'm awed. I've never shared a stage like this before. So I invite all of us just to see her and to remember that this planet, our planet, Earth, Gaia, this is the only known living planet in the whole universe. Everything that we love is here. Everyone who's ever lived and who will ever live is here. We're part of her. She's us. So what have we been doing, and what must we now change? We have inherited an economic mindset that tells us that success, our success, lies in expansion, lies in more, in accumulation, in growth. And yet nothing in nature succeeds by growing forever. Her health lies in balance. So I offer you a new conception of our well-being and our thriving, and it's this donut. What's the goal? The goal is to leave no one in the hole in the middle of the donut, falling short on the essentials of life. But as we collectively seek to meet our needs, don't overshoot that ecological ceiling. Don't put so much pressure on the life-supporting systems of our planetary home that we begin to kick her out of balance, because that is what we have been doing. So the shape of progress is not endless growth. It's thriving in balance, and it looks like a heartbeat. And if that balance is the future we want, we are very far from that right now. All of the red in this picture shows us the state of humanity and our living home. Billions of people worldwide cannot meet their most essential needs. There is a famine right now in East Africa, and the world is hardly even talking about it. We must eradicate that human deprivation, but we must also come back within planetary boundaries. We are in overshoot. I know you know this, and I know this is why we're all here. So how do we turn this story around? Let's start by recognizing that most action happens at the national level, and nations are in very different situations. See, Malawi, huge human deprivation, without putting any more than its fair share of pressure on the planet. China, a double whammy, human shortfall, ecological overshoot. I give you France, doing better than many countries on the social, but in significant ecological overshoot. And then Australia, often seen as one of the lucky country. It is not lucky to overshoot planetary boundaries like this. And I invite everybody here, next time you find yourself talking about developed countries or advanced nations, I invite you, show me one. I've never seen one. Where is a developed country? These are not developed countries. All high-income countries are overshooting their pressure on the planet. There's nothing developed about that. We must all transform. By the way, the country that's closer than any other in the world to living within the donut is Costa Rica. Nearly, nearly meeting the needs of people, almost within the means of the planet. It's proof that maybe this can be done. So, how do we turn this story around? I think there are two major dynamics that we must transform to turn this story around. First, we've inherited linear, degenerative economic, industrial systems. We take Earth's resources, we make them into stuff we want. We use it for a while, often only once, and then we throw it away. And this is pushing us over planetary boundaries. We have to bend those linear arrows into circular arrows so that we reuse and we share and we repair and refurbish and recycle. And we do it more slowly and creatively and collectively. What could that look like? I'm talking about ending the degradation of landscape and instead restoring landscape. And I invite you just to think how you feel, just seeing that contrast in those two images, from our degradation to that restoration. That's Earth regenerating herself. She forgives still. And then in our industries, instead of dumping our waste in the neighborhoods of the world's poorest people, to reuse and repair and share and correct and connect, create a circular, cyclical, regenerative industrial economy. And of course, we've never done this before. This is new. There's almost no business in the world that say, yeah, we're circular. Come on. We're beginning, we're trying, we're starting, we're learning to get there. So from degenerative to regenerative, at the same time, we've inherited economic systems that are often divisive. They capture value and opportunity in the hands of a few. Over the last decade, we've seen the rise of a global 1%. From around 1,000 billionaires in the world, now there are more than 2,000 billionaires, and this was supercharged by COVID. But this rise of a 1% has been a pattern seen in many countries. How can we create instead distributive economies? I'm not talking about redistributing in the end. I'm talking about economies that in the way they work share value and opportunity far more equitably with everyone who co-creates it. And that turns out to be the whole of society. I invite you to think of some examples you know of places and businesses that aim to be distributive by design. A couple of examples from me. I grew up in London. Margaret Thatcher sold off a lot of the social housing in the 1980s, and now that has added to a housing price crisis, a rent crisis. Housing is unaffordable. A lot of housing is owned by investors who see it as a great investment, along with their stocks and their shares and some housing, because it's treated like an investment asset. But housing is also, and first, a human right. And in the city of Vienna over here, the city of Vienna decided that decades ago. So over 60% of people in Vienna, 60% of people live in housing that we might call social housing. It's owned by the city or by a city-run cooperative. It's got an affordable rent. It's central, it's good quality, it's normal. Completely different outcomes of housing because of different decisions that the city's made about what housing really stands for here and how it therefore will be owned and managed. And then business. We've inherited a mindset from last century, from Milton Friedman, from the booming 80s, that the idea of business, of course, the purpose of business is to make a profit. What else? Well, there's a lot else that business can be for. Business can be led by its purpose. Of course it must make a profit, otherwise it can no longer survive as a business. But it's not driven by that. It's not maximizing that. It makes a profit in order to make something else happen in the world, to generate social, ecological, community benefits. How can we make that kind of business the business of the 21st century? So from degenerative to regenerative, from divisive to distributive. These are ideas, but what would it mean for them to actually happen in a place? Let me take you down to the work that we're doing at Doughnut Economics Action Lab with cities. And I invite you to think of the city that you know, whether you live, where you were born, a city you love. What would it mean for that city to live within the Doughnut, to meet the needs of all its people, but respect those of the whole planet and all people? So to get inside this, we unroll the Doughnut, we open it out, because then we can create a space, go inside between that social foundation and the ecological ceiling, where we can explore. And here's the question that we invite all ambitious cities to ask. How can our city be a home to thriving people in a thriving place, while respecting the well-being of all people and the health of the whole planet? That is a complex question, I know. We break it down to 4 lenses. We talk about the local aspirations and the global responsibilities. So let's start. How can all the people of your city thrive? What would it mean for everybody in a city to have food and healthcare and affordable housing and education, connectivity, equity, a good income, political voice? What does it mean to make sure everybody has that basic standard of living, and how can we do it? At the same time, how can our city be as generous as the wild land next door? Nature has a genius all over this beautiful planet. She's figured out at the top of mountains or in valleys, in the tropics or in the temperates. In each location, she knows how to thrive. She stores carbon, she stores water, she houses biodiversity, cleanses the air. How can we make our cities belong in that ecosystem of which they're a part? How can cities also store carbon, harvest energy, house biodiversity, and make us feel at home? So these are the local aspirations. Then, let's think of the global responsibilities. How can our city respect the health of the whole planet? This city, even just this event, think of everything that's here from all over the world. Our clothes. Where were your clothes made? The food we're eating, the electronic devices you're using, the lights, the stage, the chairs, the floor, everything. It's come from all over the world. We have a global footprint of carbon and of material use. How can this city, and you saw that overshoot of high-income countries, all of them, red overshoot. We need to come back within planetary boundaries. How do we change the way we live so we stop overdrawing on this planet? And lastly, still thinking of those global supply chains, think of the people connected to our city by the world. Who picked the food we eat? Who stitched the clothes we wear? how is the overshoot here impacting on the lives of people worldwide? I'm thinking every day recently of people in Pakistan and parts of India where the temperature is 45 or 50 degrees. We know this is the result of climate breakdown. What is our responsibility for that connection, and how must we therefore transform? And how do our cities welcome refugees? How do our cities welcome migrants? What's the policy and what's the culture? So these are the 4 lenses of the city portrait. And if you're thinking, whoa, that's complex, you're right. But none of these issues go away if we just simply ignore them. So let's look at them. Let's look at their interconnections. Let's look at how we can address them together. And let's discuss what we can do now. We've used this tool with city governments around the world. We began in 2019. This was before COVID. In Portland, Philadelphia, and Amsterdam. It was amazing to see politicians and community members invigorated in this conversation, talking across the usual divides. Amsterdam was the first city to put this policy at the heart of its circularity commitment, to be 50% circular in material use by 2030. They've integrated it into buildings and construction, into textiles, and into food. But even Amsterdam, they're only just beginning. This is the beginning of a long and complex journey that is also urgent and must happen now. Leeds in the UK just recently produced a beautiful report created by a civic organization with the university. This is online. If you want to see, if you think, I'd love to do this where I am, check out the Leeds report, because they did a beautiful job of looking at their city through all 4 lenses and then having a workshop saying, how do we transform? How do we do this? And then lastly, let me bring it down right to the level of community. In Birmingham in the UK, I'm not often that very proud of the UK, and I won't even go into the reasons why. You can guess many reasons why. But I am proud of what's happening in Leeds, and I'm really proud of what's happening in Birmingham. At the level of the neighborhood, they are going street by street. Can we live in the Doughnut? And they make it playful. They make it irresistible. You want to get involved. And they say, the kids understand this immediately. It's the adults we have to talk to again and again. So we can do this at every level, from the nation to the province, to the city, to the town, to the neighborhood. Last question I want to answer. People say, okay, so how can this really happen? I find that some cities are stuck in asking, how do we make our city grow? They're still stuck in that 20th century mentality, growth first. And so many cities are like, no, we want to thrive. What makes the difference between the two? What really allows us to pivot from the old way to the new? It's the deep design of our institutions. And I'm talking right now about city governments, but actually this deep design of institutions is true for every institution. So if you're a company, if you're a university, if you're a foundation, or a city government, here's the questions, the 5 design traits. What is your purpose? Why do you even exist? What are you in service of in the world? What are the networks, the relationships you have with your staff, with your customers, with your suppliers, with your residents? What are the networks you're going to build up, and what are the old ones you're going to let go of because they don't serve? How is your organization governed? Who's in the room when decisions are taken? Who has voice? And what are the metrics of success? How is it owned? Who owns the city? Who owns the housing? In Vienna, it makes all the difference. Who owns the water supply? I know in this city it was privatized, and then the city said, whoa, that's not a good move. Let's bring it back under public control. Who owns the electricity, the transport? Who owns the land? And how is it financed? Where is that finance coming from? And what is it expecting and demanding? Because these deep designs will shape profoundly what we can be and do in the world. So I invite you, whatever organization you work for, to take these 5 questions back into your organization if you want it to be part of transformation now. Let me finish there and say, this is just the beginning. If you find appealing the tools I just shared about diving down at the city level into the Doughnut, It's all in the Commons, online, at our website, Doughnut Economics Action Lab. It's just doughuteconomics.org. I invite you to go there. Browse what we're doing, join, check it out, because we believe that by sharing ideas openly, this is the only way we can transform at the speed and the scale that's required. Thank you very much.
Wow. Well, Kate, that was amazing. Thank you so much. So much to unpick, and such passion and such energy there. And you told me last week that you go where the energy is, and it's so amazing to feel the energy here. And I do feel it's here. It's on this stage. It's here now. And there's just so much to be done. And one of the things I was thinking about as you were talking was kind of how do we scale this, and how do we leverage the kind of the individual cities? And 70% of us live in cities. And how are you seeing collaboration across different cities to share this and to sort of try to accelerate, because we know we have to move very fast? How's that looking across your perspective?
So the first thing I've learned, yes, go where the energy is. So at Doughnut Economics Action Lab, it's a point of pride. We have never once said to anybody, oh, please use this tool. We've never pressured or lobbied or tried to persuade anyone, because then you're in this pushing.
Yep.
We just wait until cities or neighborhoods or communities say, I think this could be useful for us. I judge from the context I know that this could be useful, and then we start working with them. And then, along with go where the energy is, it's the power of peer-to-peer inspiration. So it's one thing for me to come and stand on a stage or go on a podcast and say, what if cities aim to live in the donut? It's a completely different game when a mayor or a city councillor says, oh yeah, in my city, we're doing this, because people are inspired by people like themselves. A mayor inspires a mayor, a CEO inspires a CEO, a schoolgirl inspires a schoolgirl. So it's when they start talking about what they're doing that others come. And when Amsterdam said, we're going to adopt the donut in 2020 at the height of their COVID crisis, that triggered ripple effects around the world. So our role in the Action Lab is to showcase this work. Even though it's not finished and complete and perfect, it's beginning and learning, but it's got a vulnerability to it. But we showcase it because we know that that is what brings others along. And then it's now happening in Mexico City, in Ipoh in Malaysia, in Curaçao in the Caribbean. It's spreading, and people are adapting it as they go.
Amazing. And there are a lot of parallels to business, of course, in this. So we were talking yesterday about changing the business as usual mindset. And we had businesses who were kind of had leaders who were really putting the kind of the purpose at the heart. And then there is the kind of the trickling down through the organization to actually make the change happen. And one of the other things that struck me is this kind of how cities are made up with all the players. So you've got the mayor, and thank goodness mayors are increasingly powerful.
Yep.
And have the influence. But then you've got the property owners and the guys who are, making a lot of money out of letting their properties. And they're, I think COVID's been quite tough for them because the landlord letting thing has changed. But are you seeing businesses working with governments and sacrificing maybe the profit side of things in order to move towards purpose in a kind of future thrival kind of state?
So business, just in the same way that a lot of cities have come, mayors have come and said, I want to use this tool, many businesses have got in touch and said, oh, we'd love to use the donut in our work. Now, to be totally honest, the first thing we say, wait a minute, because the fastest and easiest thing that could happen here is it gets completely greenwashed, and it becomes a nice little piece of branding for companies. So we've been very careful with business. We've got a fantastic business lead in our team called Erinch Sahan. We are currently writing a set of tools. Those ones I showed were for cities. We're writing a set of tools right now for businesses. And what they will say is this: if you want your business to help bring humanity into the donut, we absolutely believe it can. But guess what? It's the deep design of your business that matters. So it's great that you've got purpose aligned, and you need to be moving in the right networks with building the right relationships with suppliers and ecosystem of industry, how you're governed, what have you written into your articles of association, right? What are the metrics of success? But now I'm going to go deeper. How are you owned? Because whether a business is owned by its founding entrepreneur, by venture capital, by a family for 300 years, by its employees, by shareholders, by the state, these are all existing forms of business ownership, and each one profoundly shapes the finance that comes, what that finance is, where it's coming from, and what that finance is expecting and demanding. And put it simply, we've seen business run to maximize extracting financial value for the owners. That's just been, Milton Friedman said that's the best thing you can do in society. Why? Why can we not have businesses that are run to generate the maximum purpose benefits possible, making a profit? And so we're working with companies that want to look at their deep design. And I think any company that says we're a purpose business, I'm like, fine, purpose. How are you owned? How are you financed? It's got to be in line with you actually achieving that purpose.
It's such an important point. There's lots of investors here at ChangeNOW. I hope you're listening to that, first point. Secondly, as a B Corp, my business, Springwise, is a B Corp, and we know that we are in our articles, we are signed up to all of this, and I guess that's a proxy for some of how you look at maybe who you want to work with, the B Corp movement. So it's that kind of deep ownership is so powerful for this whole debate. Just shifting topics slightly because we're running short of time as usual, but thinking about innovation, we've got 1,000 innovators here at ChangeNOW, and they're out there, showcasing what they're doing, amazing solutions. And the DNA of ChangeNOW is about inspiration, but also about the solutions. What are you seeing kind of happening out there? You talked about the local. You talked about sort of the regional. I mean, is innovation part of it? How are cities harnessing innovation and supporting it, if you like, in order to have the solutions that we need to save Mother Earth?
So innovation is massively part of it. And technologies, I don't think, are either good or bad. It's how they're used. And I'm going to come back to the same thing. It's how they are given a purpose. What purpose is the drone technology being put to? I can think of some great uses. I can think of disastrous uses. What is the purpose we're giving it in our business? And how is our business going to be owned and financed? So it comes back to the startups. And actually, we've been working with startups on a pilot program of doing business in the Doughnut. Because startups often are driven by purpose, and this event is full of them. Then the critical question comes, okay, now how are you going to scale? Where is the money going to come from? And of course, the real danger point is that in comes pretty mainstream venture capital, and then it imposes its mainstream financial demands and says, oh, come on, that was nice in the early days. It's a nice, good marketing brand, but let's get serious. This is big business now. So you've got to cut the corners off your purpose, and you get turned into a pretty mainstream company. We want to work with those very startups to say, you've got to design not only your technology and your product, design yourself, protect yourself from having your purpose knocked out of you as you scale. And I think cities can aid this. Many cities now have a startup hub. They want to encourage that. And some cities have begun to approach us and said, we want to embed this thinking into our startup hub, and we will support those businesses. We need to make the finance that they need available so they're not forced to merely turn their business into a financial extractive one.
That's fantastic. And I think that's, there's a lot of people out there who are looking for funding. And actually, if we've got the city community here who can be part of that, that's going to be powerful. And it's the kind of the same thesis, isn't it? What are the, so I was sort of, we've got last 1 minute, but in terms of what's next for Doughnut and how are you kind of continuing on this amazing path? I mean, you're a force of nature, Kate. So what are your next plans, and how are you kind of accelerating your movement?
So we go where the energy is. It's been coming from cities. It's next is business, right? We've unleashed these city tools, and we're seeing it amazingly ripple through cities. Within a couple of months, we're going to release our tools for businesses, and we're really excited to make and take great care that that's done well and not turn into greenwash. I'm really excited that the next step in our team is to hire an education lead, because I actually began this organization because I used to get tweets from teachers saying, today, I'm pushing aside the curriculum. I'm teaching my students about the Doughnut because these are the ideas they need. So working with teachers to bring these ideas into schools, into the curriculum, so that the current generation of school students grow up with this as normal, grow up recognizing that protecting this earth is the first responsibility of cities, of business, and of ourselves. So getting it into teaching and getting it to schools.
Amazing place to wrap, actually, Kate. And I think,
Thank you.
look, What can I say? We're also completely on time, but Kate, you really are an inspiration. You're a force of nature. We're so privileged to be here to listen to you today. Thank you to ChangeNOW for inviting Kate. Thank you, Kate, for coming. I know that yesterday was tough on the travel.
Can I say
you want to say one thing?
Thank you for saying that you see me as a force of nature. I will say I consider this big team work. And I get my energy from all the people who are doing this. It takes a whole ecosystem of change makers. So it's all of us. It's all of us. We do this together. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kate. Brilliant. Well done.
Go.
We'll go this.